Hey guys, welcome to Redneck Off the Range. Today I have another exciting update on the lake since the fishpocalypse happened last year. So, if you follow my other lake update videos, you know that I've been trying to catch Redear sunfish. We had 400 Redear sunfish stocked in the fall, along with 1,000 bluegill and 200 hybrid bluegill. Now, I've caught tons and tons of bluegill. Some were survivors, some were new bluegill, and some were bluegill that have probably been hatched this year because they're, some of them are really tiny, 2 inches or so. So, nice variety of bluegill in there, like I said, anywhere between 2 inches all the way up to about 8 inches. I've also caught quite a few hybrid bluegill. I would say I've caught between 50 and 75 hybrid bluegill just myself. And that's 50 to 75 out of 200. So that's a really good sample size of fish that have survived the initial stocking. So I would venture to say that probably pretty close to 100% of those fish survived, maybe like 80%, 85%, somewhere around there, didn't get eaten by bigger fish. So that's good. And the hybrid bluegill that I've caught, they range from like, 4.5 inches all the way up to close to 7 inches. So there's a big range of sizes, even though they were all stocked at the same time, and I would imagine that has to do with which fish are eating the fish food versus which ones aren't, because I don't necessarily throw fish food everywhere around the lake, and not necessarily all the fish know that there's fish food being thrown at one part of the lake at that specific time. I feel like most of the hybrid bluegills that you catch around the dock area, which is where I mostly feed at, is those are the biggest fish, but you do catch some smaller fish there as well. And then further away on the other side of the lake, you catch some of the smaller ones. But I haven't really been catching very many. Well, I haven't really caught any Redear until just recently. So 2 weekends ago, I caught my very first Redear sunfish in the lake. Now, I'm pretty sure we never had Redear sunfish. I think my grandfather tried to stock them once before, but he only put like 50 in, and that's 50 fish that are like 2 to 3 inches in an already established lake that's full of largemouth bass and crappie, and so I imagine that they all pretty much got eaten up before they could get to size. And as far as I know, that's the only time that anybody's ever tried to stock Redear until now. But last weekend I caught my very first Redear. It was about 4 inches long, and honestly it's a little smaller than I expected them to be. I kind of expected them to be at least 5 inches by now, but I do know that Redear, they grow a little bit slower because they generally don't eat fish food the way bluegill and hybrid bluegill do. So anyway, I was really excited to catch that one Redear sunfish. And it was very obviously a Redear sunfish. I was wondering if maybe, they're so deep in this muddy, murky water that maybe the red spots on their ear weren't going to come, weren't going to show because of the lack of sunlight, because the amount of sunlight depends on how bright the colors of the fish are, depends on the amount of sunlight they get, is what I'm trying to say. And so I looked at a lot of these other pictures of like the really small light colored bluegill, and I determined that those are all bluegill and that this is definitely the Redear. So that was 2 weekends ago. And that was the only Redear I caught. Now, in order to catch that one Redear, I probably caught at least 200 regular bluegill and at least 50 hybrid bluegill. maybe even closer to 60 hybrid bluegill. I take a picture of pretty much every fish I catch just so I can keep track. So not a very good sample size compared to the hybrids. So fast forward to this past weekend, and this past Sunday I caught another Redear sunfish. This one was about 5 inches long, and it was really pretty. It had a lot of orange in it, and I'm not used to seeing Redear that colorful. Now they might not be quite as colorful when they get bigger, but this one was really, really pretty. And at the same time that I caught that one off the shore, my sister also caught one, which was a little bit smaller, but still a little bit bigger than the first one I caught. So we caught 2 Redear at the same time, and as far as I know, those 3 Redear sunfish are the only 3 that were ever caught. I asked my sister and my brother-in-law, and they don't think they caught any Redear. They're not quite as familiar with different species of sunfish like I am, but I showed them, you know, what they look like, and they don't think they caught any like that. So as far as I know, those are the only 3 that have ever been caught out of that initial stocking. So 3 out of 400. Not exactly a great sample size, but it's a start, and hopefully, you know, as they get a little bit bigger, I'll start to catch them a little bit more, and we'll get a better idea of how the population is doing. So that being said, I imagine them only being 4 to 5 inches that they didn't spawn this year, because I would imagine if they did spawn, they would be bigger, and also I would have caught more of them, just a guess. And if I just imagine that those 3 fish that were caught were not spawned this year, because I think they would actually be smaller than that. So I'm just assuming so, but I'm assuming they won't spawn until next spring. So hopefully they hang on until then. I imagine they will. I mean, that 5-inch fish, that's pretty good size Redear sunfish compared to the typical bass that I've been catching. I mean, I caught, you know, maybe like a 9-inch bass is probably about the biggest bass I've caught this year. I'm sure there's a few others that are even bigger, but you know, we never really had that many really big bass in the lake since I've been alive. I mean, they had big bass many years ago, before, you know, the population started to get really big and everything. But hopefully the Redear will start to reproduce, and, you know, get a bigger population, and we can start to eliminate the snails in the lake. So that would eliminate, or will at least help eliminate, the parasites, because I've noticed in a lot of the fish that I've been catching, whether they be the bluegill, hybrid bluegill, or even the bass, or even the catfish, the few catfish that I've caught, a lot of them have the yellow grub and the black grub, which are parasites that rely on snails. And so, you know, that's the whole reason you stock Redear sunfish, is to control the snail population, which in turn controls the grub population, all the parasites. So hopefully in the next few years the parasite population will decrease, and you'll see better fish with less parasites in them. The only other update that I have is that we've been catching a few more catfish. I think we're up to 10 catfish now. Most of them were 9 to 10 inches, but I did catch one. The last catfish that I caught was about 1 foot long. I didn't have a tape measure, but I put my phone up against it, and it was almost twice as long as my phone. So that was, you know, roughly 1 foot long, and so that's a pretty good size catfish for, you know, compared to what we've been catching. Maybe there's a few bigger ones, maybe not. I don't know. But all the catfish that I've caught have been just regular channel catfish, which means they're all survivors of the fishpocalypse, which is good. So there's at least 10 in there, because I'm pretty sure they're all different catfish, just comparing the pictures and their markings and everything. But like I said, they were all regular channel catfish. I haven't caught any albino channel catfish. I put 50 of those in the spring, and they range between 4 inches and 8 inches, I think. They say that they were 4 to 6, but I mean, there were definitely quite a few that were way bigger than 6 inches. I would say at least 8, maybe even 9 inches on some of them. So they should be about the size of most of those other catfish that I've been catching, at least the biggest ones, by now. So we'll just have to keep fishing and see if we catch one, and if not, hopefully next year they'll be even bigger, and it'll just be a little more fun to catch a bigger albino catfish. And then, in the years to come, I may stock a few more over the years, but in the years to come, hopefully they get even bigger and we can catch like, a 2-foot albino catfish. I think that'd be really cool. So no albino catfish have been caught, and no yellow perch have been caught either, because I stocked the yellow perch in the spring as well. But they were a little bit smaller than I was expecting, and I don't imagine that they've grown very much. And also, unfortunately, I think a good number of them probably got eaten just because of how small they are. They were only 3 to 4 inches. I was expecting them to be 4 to 6 inches, but it just didn't work out that way. So hopefully a few of them make it till next year. I do plan on stocking more yellow perch in the fall. I'm waiting on an email back from the fishery to see pricing and just kind of decide on what I want to do, because the one fishery that's supposed to be restocking the lake from what we lost, they're supposed to bring us largemouth, black crappie, and channel catfish, I think 75 fish each. So they're going to do that like in October. And from this other fishery, this is the fishery that we deal with most of the time, I want to see about getting some walleye and some hybrid striped bass. It depends on the pricing, and I might ask for some opinions, but I do think that is something I want to do. I'm not going to put like a ton in, because that'll really throw off things, but I do think that walleye over time will be a good predator to combat the crappie population, because crappie tend to overpopulate. Now, our crappie originally were introduced way later than the regular largemouth bass, and so we just put crappie in every year, or almost every year, and so that's how we got a decent crappie population. But now it seems like there's, after the fish kill, it seems like there's a lot of small crappie. There's some big crappie too, but there's a lot of small crappie in there, and a lot of them I think are going to be spawning size for next spring. And if there's not enough other predators in the lake, then those crappie will start to reproduce, rapidly, and that's just not going to be good. That's going to throw everything off. So I'm thinking the walleye might be necessary to help combat that in the future, but also I might just go and try to catch, like a couple dozen crappie and just kind of cut them up and throw them back into the water for the catfish and the turtles. I mean, these crappie are only like this big. There are some that are like 9, 10, even maybe up to 12 inches long, but most of them that I catch are about 6 or 7 inches long. So big enough to spawn really soon, but not a desirable size. So that's a whole other topic. But yeah, I think that's all the updates I have for you. I'll give you more updates as time goes on, if we catch anything new, what we're going to put in the lake, and just, yeah, there's all kinds of updates that can be had here. So, but that's all for this one. So subscribe to my channel, and until next time, be safe.